Hey guys, in this video, me and Punker Mike had the opportunity to have a chat and kick it with Mike from Punk Rock and Politics podcast. He wanted to talk about religion, Jordon Peterson, and social justice warriors. So we did, and it's a really fucking fascinating discussion. I think what I personally found most fascinating is the way all three of these topics sort of really do tie in together and are just sort of feed off of each other, and the way Peterson sort of distorts his notions and understandings of religion and social justice warriors, and of course my personal pet peeve with him, the way he distorts Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. So we're going to get into it, but before we do, we're going to play American Jesus by Bad Religion, because I think it's apropos.
By nationality, I'm a member of a growing populace. We enforce our popularity. There are things that seem to pull us under, and there are things that drag us down. But there's a power and a vital presence that's lurking all around. We got the American Jesus, see him on the interstate. We've got the American Jesus, he outbuilt the president's estate.
Have you ever asked God for forgiveness? I'm not sure I have. I just go and try and do a better job from there. I don't think so. I don't bring God into that picture. I don't.
I'm sorry for the Earth's population. Some you live in the USA.
We've got a border, the southern border is like a piece of Swiss cheese, and we'll talk about it. We will build the wall, yes. We will build the wall.
We got a place to go where we die, and the architect resides right here.
Build the wall. Build the wall. Build the wall. Build the wall.
Jesus, overwhelming millions every day. The farmer bearing fields, the foots the army wields, expressions on the faces of the starting millions, the power of the plan, the few that drives the clan, he's the motive and the conscience of the murderer. He's a preacher on TV, the false sincerity, the formula that's written by the big computers and nuclear bombs, the kids with no moms, and I'm fearful that he's inside me. Yeah, we've got the American Jesus, see him on the interstate. We've got the American Jesus, exercising his authority. We've got the American Jesus, bolstering national faith. We've got the American Jesus, overwhelming millions every day. Yeah.
We evolved from a primary thalamus-driven brain. We began as a fight-or-flight creature. Now we have our prefrontal cortex that lets us analyze whether we should fight or flight, and it helps us find nuance between those two choices. But that takes a little bit of effort. And lazy people don't want to take effort. They just want to be told whether they
Exactly.
I begin the book with a short list written by the writer Umberto Eco, where he lists what he thinks are the 14 points of eternal fascism or fascism, that cult of masculinity, that war against modernism, that war against truth, that obsession with apocalyptic violence as a purging agent or cleansing agent, to make the world pure and usher in the utopia. And I think when you look closely at the ideology of the radical Christian right, those so-called Christians in the United States who want to create a Christian state, in generic terms, they're fascist. Certainly fascism conjures up historical images, as you saw, pictures of Mussolini or Hitler, but it is an ideological belief system. And that's certainly the argument of the book, that this has been a dangerous mutation. These are not traditional evangelicals. They're not traditional fundamentalists who have always called on followers to remove themselves from the contaminants of secular society, to shun political power. Evangelical leaders like Billy Graham always talked about not getting too close to power, and he himself was used and burned by Richard Nixon. This is a dangerous and radical mutation. This is a dangerous and radical mutation. It is about creating, using the iconography and language of Christianity to create an authoritarian, or I think arguably a fascist state.
Hey, this is Punker Mike. Welcome to Punks for Progress. This is my partner, Reverend Aaron. And you know what? Got my buddy here. Mike from Punk Rock and Politics is joining us today. What's happening, Mike?
What's up? What's up? What's up to Aaron, and aloha to Punker Mike?
What's up to the mics?
Yeah, you got the team mics here, huh?
Yeah,
I'm just delighted to be here on your guys' show. We had Punker Mike on my episode, or my podcast, Punk Rock and Politics, a few weeks back, maybe a few months ago now, and that was a blast. We got into it with guns and all sorts of stuff, and I'm just stoked to be on your podcast, and I dig what you guys are doing, and I'm stoked to be here, so thank you.
I will try not to talk over you this time.
Yeah, no, I do that to everyone anyways on my show, so, no worries.
Yeah, well, I am of the impression that I'm always the one with the most important thing to say, so I will be talking over people regularly. We're people with podcasts. It's kind of the thing. We woke up one day and went, man, I talk over a lot of people. Maybe I should just do a podcast.
Exactly. Yeah, I listen back to a lot of my episodes, and I'm like, editing and whatnot, and I'm like, God, I gotta stop talking so much. I gotta let them talk a little bit more.
That's one of the reasons I quit listening after I edit the show. I'm like, I can't listen to this again.
Yeah.
So you do more than just the Punk Rock and Politics podcast, though, too, right? You have another podcast that you do.
Yeah, I do. I have another podcast with my dad. We call him the Old Man. He actually has a dream of going to every Major League Baseball stadium, and he only has one more to go, and that's up in Seattle. So I've gone to quite a bit with them, up in San Francisco, out here in San Diego, and then we just recently went to Philadelphia. So we talk about baseball and kind of talk about the city with the baseball stadiums. But I'm not a huge baseball fan. I mean, I love baseball. I love the sport. I love the fact how baseball brings people together, because that was one thing about the politics. On my show, I love to have all sorts of people, whether they're libertarian, alt-right, super lefties like us, or right in the middle, or even if they don't have a political opinion, I always welcome anyone, bands, or any comedian or other podcasters on my show. But yeah, I kind of did that. It was something he was doing, and he was really impressed by it. And I'm like, dude, I think a lot of people would be interested. So that's called Chasing a Dream with the Dugout Duo. If anyone is into baseball, I would definitely recommend checking it out. I spend a lot of time editing those episodes versus the Punk Rock and Politics. And I mean, I'm sure Reverend Aaron, how long it takes to edit these. It's like you don't just record it and throw it all together, especially if you want it to sound good. So yeah, I mean, definitely anyone out there listening, you gotta give mad props to Reverend Aaron, and then you got the cool guy host over here, Punker Mike. So with the magic of you two putting it together and making an awesome podcast. So I'm stoked to get into this issue. Yeah, dude. And this is gonna be a fun topic here, huh, Reverend Aaron?
Yeah, we're gonna offend lots of people, probably. Not really on purpose, but we're gonna be talking about some really sort of hot button, touchy subjects. Before I get into them, I just wanted to say I didn't understand that was actually the premise of your podcast. I just figured it was about baseball, and I played a lot of Little League growing up, and I'll play softball with some people. I enjoy sports. Yeah. I don't watch sports at all. Yeah. I don't care about the business of it is disgusting, but the thought of you doing this with your pops and cruising around and kind of helping your dad live out a dream, I just think that's really fucking fantastic, man. And it sounds like really interesting, especially when you're talking about the cities that you're going to, and it sounds really cool. But yeah, we kind of have a trinity of topics tonight: religion, Jordon Peterson, and social justice warriors. So yeah, there's going to be someone listening that doesn't like something that we have to say tonight.
Definitely.
But let's
kind of do when.
When do you guys not offend people? Huh?
Right.
But let's do it in that order. Let's talk about religion first, and then we'll get into the Lobster King, and then we'll get into social justice warriors. But first, since we're going to be talking about religion, I think it would be really good to explain kind of where the three of us are coming from. And like Mike and I, Punker Mike and I were talking about it, and we talked to you about it too, Mike, about how this is kind of a cool opportunity for us here at Punks for Progress because, I have a moniker, Reverend Aaron. I'm sure that people are curious where that comes from and what that's all about. And, while I'm an anarcho-syndicalist, Mike is a very, very far left progressive. He's not an anarchist, but a lot of anarchists are right. And a lot of anarchists are it's kind of taken for granted that they're probably atheists. I'm not. So it'd just be good to let our listeners know kind of where me and Mike come from at this point in our, spiritual evolutions in life, where you always talk politics and stuff, and we don't get into this kind of issue very much. So I'm into it. So if you're into it, Mike,
right? Because you're not supposed to talk about politics and religion in mixed company, don't you know?
That's the rule. That's at a young age. I heard that you're not supposed to talk about sex, politics, or religion when I was like 10 or 12, and then that's what really got me into all this stuff.
And here we are. So let's delve into the religion, yeah?
Yeah.
Say before we do, that's this weird trope in the United States of like at the bars, you never discuss politics or religion in the bars. And, every proper revolution throughout history that has fomented freedom for the people was started by meetings in the pubs and the taverns by people who, talked religion and politics in the pubs. And there's still an incredible tradition of that in Europe. In the United States, no, you're not allowed to. So we talk about vapid bullshit and watch sports.
And they still start fights. Come on.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
But let's fight over religion and politics, not what football team you're down for. I mean, I don't want to fight with anybody by any means. Don't misunderstand, but So
getting
anyway.
into heated civil dialogue.
Yes.
You're mixing alcohol and emotions.
Exactly. No matter what, you could find anything to fight about when you mix alcohol and emotions, I think. Yeah.
Sure.
So Mike from Punk Rock and Politics. Mike from Punk Rock and Politics. Are you a crazy evangelical? Are you a Muslim? Are you a Muslim terrorist? Are you are you a Buddhist? Where do you come from, my friend?
It's a really interesting evolution, actually, and yeah, totally, it's cool because I don't go into this on my podcast at all, really, ever. But I was raised Mormon. So I was Mormon for, Then I think Mormonism is basically a wonderful merge of Christianity with New Age religion with capitalism. Because the Mormon religion...
Oh, that's a good one.
The Mormon religion is basically ran like a business. It's the weirdest thing ever. But really the main point where I really was like, pissed off and realized this shit is just bullshit and it's not for me is I think I was about 14 or so, and here in California they had the very first vote against gay marriage, and I remember they were going up on the podium and saying to people flat out, you need to vote against I forgot what it was back then, but proposition this. You need to vote against it because, if we have gay marriage, then God will be mad and the world will end and the whole, hell will come here. And that's why I was like, man, you can go up there and talk and give talks and say how gay marriage is bad and everything, but you shouldn't go up there and say flat out. I mean, you could be like, hint, hint, wink, wink. We have an election coming up and, God said this about gays, but you going up there and just say, everyone needs to straight vote against this. And I was like, that's really fucked up because a lot of people are just going to do it because they're like, oh, they're saying it, God's saying that. So I left that religion, when I was 15, 16, really was able to just stop going once I was 18 due to family pressures. But I kind of felt agnostic, or I never really identified with religion. But then about 2 years straight, a while when I was in my early 20s, kind of had an identity crisis when it comes to religion and spirituality. So I read the Quran, I read the Bible, and I didn't read it all. I went back and revisited it because I've read it plenty of times, in my younger years, and I've already read the Book of Mormon. And then I actually read my favorite one that I actually got to was the Tao Te Ching. And that was pretty much what I really relate to. And then, the Bangladesh Gita, which that's the Hindu one. I actually like that. And we're going to get into this later with the hero's journey. And I think that actually has a lot of the same elements with the hero's journey, actually. But the number one thing that really resonated with me was the Tao Te Ching. And basically, this was written, 4,000 years ago, and it's still relevant today, and it's about 81 short poems. And the cool thing about it is every book or version you get, because it's all translated, every translator kind of puts their own spin on it. So sometimes I would go buy one and it would always say the her. And I was like, well, I don't relate to this. So what I would end up doing is I own pretty much every religious book there is right now, because I think it's kind of a cool thing to do. But as far as the Tao Te Ching, I don't own one because I always would buy it. And then I would meet someone. I'm like, oh, you have to read this book. And I would give it away. Sure. Yeah. And, that was my thing. But, just number one, it's kind of enjoy the now. Be like water, go where people don't want to go, and you have to have no attachment, but still love people in the now. So that's kind of where I am. I'm kind of an agnostic, but I follow the philosophy of the Tao Te Ching. So it's, yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
That interesting.
I am hearing much of similarities to Joseph Campbell's take on the hero's journey, and I got. The first time I really sat down and read it I got it as a birthday gift from a philosophy professor friend of mine about 3 years ago. And it's one of those things that I'll read when I'm stressed the fuck out, kind of for no reason, just kind of anxiety. It's just very kind of calming and inspiring and simple and truthful, a lot like much like Proverbs. The writings of Solomon. But, another thing that I found really curious, and I'm interested to hear Punker Mike's take on it. You were raised a Mormon, and there's another person that's a part of Punks for Progress that was raised a Mormon as well.
Did we talk about this, Mike?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so we got a couple of fucking Jack Mikes on the show tonight.
Yeah, bro. I was born and raised in the Mormon church as well.
Oh, wow.
And
okay.
I would say, I remember you're obviously a lot younger than I am. I remember it was Prop 8 in California.
That's what it was, yep.
And at that point, I was pretty much already done with the church. Honestly, this is the way my head thinks, okay? They were, when you grow up in the church, they preach to you and they drill into your head you're going to go on a mission. Yes. The whole time you're a little boy, you're going to save your money and you're going to go on a mission. And mom and dad are saving their money so they can send you on a mission. And this is the greatest thing ever. And so they start talking to you about a mission. And when you start finding out what the hell it is, I was like, wait a minute. I'm going to be gone for 2 years. Okay, I get that right out. But you can't listen to any rock and roll music. I'm like, what? I'm like, and then you can't go swimming. And I'm like, I'm out. I can't go swimming, and I can't listen. It was the rock and roll music pretty much. I'm like, that's it. I'm done. I am not going on a mission. And I ended up, I met Aaron's aunt in school, and we started dating. And at that point, I didn't want to be in the church anymore. And they had found out that we were having premarital sex and wanted to kick me out of the church. I know, right?
That's my Aunt Margaret. God.
And so
I'm just finding this out now.
Oh my God, you knew this. So
This is awesome.
they wanted to kick me out. They wanted to excommunicate me.
Oh wow, yeah.
And my mom, I said, I went in to talk to the bishop, and I told him, I said, fine. I said, I don't care, but if you do, you're going to kill my mom. I'm just letting you know, bro. I mean, my mom will have a heart attack. So they ended up disfellowshipping me. And later on, I actually went through. I went through the program of Narcotics Anonymous for a while. Got clean and sober, quit drinking, quit doing all the fun stuff, all the good stuff, and so which is based on a belief in God or a power greater than yourself. And so I began to explore religion a little bit more, and maybe went back to it because that's the only religion I ever knew. I was not going to start looking into Catholicism at all, or anything about even close to that. For the Baptist or Methodist or anything like that. That was just not something I was interested in. So I ended up going back and looking at the Mormon Church again, and just like, no, this is so not for me. So my progression. So then I became to believe in a power greater than myself, and it could have been anything. But I kind of looked at the way things were and things were going around me, and I thought I might be able to believe in that. So I mean, kind of more of a spiritual belief. But then that has kind of more evolved into a more. I mean, I still believe in spirituality and doing the right thing for the right reasons. But I'm an atheist. I do not believe in God. I don't believe there is a God. When we die, we're dead, man. We're not going to go live we're not going to be judged and go into outer darkness because I had premarital sex with Aaron's aunt in high school.
Wait, we're
okay?
not going to get our own. We're not going to get our own planet and
got
become
news
God
for you.
ourselves?
You're not going to become a god and a goddess, over your own universe.
I actually kind of like that idea. I was like, that's kind of cool. I don't believe it, but it's kind of cool.
Well, yeah, but then my thought
Will
is,
you guys clarify something? Go ahead, Mike, go ahead.
Here's the thing, man. It's like I even told my mom this. I'm like, okay, listen, think of this, Mom. I'm like, the only way you're gonna get there to be a god and goddess is if you're perfect. God created you imperfect. What kind of fucking shit is that about? I'm like, okay, so you're never gonna make it. Well, you have to do the best you can. Okay, but you're not perfect.
Yeah.
So I mean,
you
so
still
you
have to
strive
jump
your
through
whole
all the
life.
hoops.
Yeah, you work your whole life to try to be something that you're not. And that's perfect. And then, so, like you said, when Prop 8 came around, I had delved into this a little bit further, and I found out that the church had financially backed this proposition in California. And I'm like, you've got to be fucking kidding me.
I know. How do they not lose their tax-exempt status by doing that? I don't understand.
Strategically.
Yeah, and it was prior. That was prior to Trump overturning, what is it, the Johnson Amendment, I think is what they called it, the separation, where you couldn't maintain your tax exempt status and endorse.
No, this was back in the 90s. I mean, this was back in the 90s.
Mm-hmm. But the distinction might be, Michael, that they're not endorsing a candidate.
Yeah,
churches can donate to things. They can donate money to stuff, and if you're a church and you want to donate to Punks for Progress, that'd be fantastic.
The Church of Reverend Aaron. Here's one of the things I wanted to mention to you, Mike, is I recall the church having a strict policy about not getting up in at the pulpit and telling you who to vote for.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Mm-hmm. That's the way it's supposed to be, separation of church and state, right? However, I absolutely remember them endorsing candidates, maybe in a roundabout way. I don't remember, and I've even brought this up to some of the people I went to church with that I'm friends with on Facebook. So, and no, the church has never done that. And I'm like, I maybe not directly, but definitely indirectly they have. So. Yeah, so I was surprised to hear
when saying it.
Yeah, I was surprised to hear that you said that. I know, and that's one of the other things. It's just like, no, I'm sorry. If this so-called God that you believe in created everyone equally, then guess what? He created gay people too. If you know any of them, and Aaron and I might know one or two. Yeah. And as far as everyone I've ever talked to said they've always felt like this from as long as they can remember. This is, why would anybody choose a lifestyle where they get, beat up? Or killed? Yeah.
Humiliated and discriminated on every level.
Right. It's not a choice.
No.
So
Yeah,
and the more they come out,
And we'll
the more
cover
they come
that
out
a lot
against it.
in Jordon Peterson segment, I'm sure.
Yeah, the more they come out against it, the more it just pisses me off, and it goes to show. It tells me this is not any kind of an institution I want anything to do with. So, yeah, I believe you do the right thing for the right reasons. You're a good person because you know what you're supposed to be a good person. Okay. You know, you don't rip people off. You know. You might insult them once in a while. You might say shit that you're not supposed to, but you know, for the most part, you know, you're a good person. You do what you're supposed to do for the right reasons.
Mike, and that gets to the core of like the criticisms against atheists such as yourself. Is like, okay, how can you have any type of moral, grounding without, essentially being afraid of hell?
Exactly. Yes, I've heard people say that. If there wasn't a God, I would do blank and blank. And I'm like, you need the fear of a God to not like murder that person. I'm like, really?
You know what that makes them, Mike? A fucking scumbag. Because basically they're sitting around wishing they could murder people and rape people and do all this horrible shit. But because they don't want an eternity in hell, they don't do it.
Yeah. It's like, that fear keeps them in line.
Good. I guess I'm glad in that situation that they have that fear. Okay. Yeah. But there's all kinds of unaddressed shit going on there, and they probably are going to end up doing that shit. And God, the way the Christian religion has gone today, it's like it's a platform to do that shit now.
Mm-hmm. Well, and then you were mentioning Catholicism also, and that's another thing, with the priests molesting boys, and that wasn't just a few bad apples. That was the institutional religion that was covering that up and moving people from one area to another, and that's like, wow, that's bad.
And I will say, I find the Catholic Church just horribly oppressive and disgusting, and it always has been. Mm-hmm. But this new Pope has done so much stuff that I've just thrown it back, impressed by. I'm trust me, I'm not going to advocate for the church. Fuck the Catholic Church, but not a bad dude, man. Not a bad fucking dude.
No, Francis is pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I had this conversation with Layla the other day. We were saying the same thing. This guy's kind of got his head screwed on right.
Yeah. But so I guess I'll get into where I'm coming from. There was something more I wanted to say about the Catholic Church, and I got off on a tangent on Frank, but anyway, so let's see. For me, my real first connection to religion was I was already had already discovered punk rock. My Aunt Margaret, who Punker Mike defiled. She really liked like David Bowie and like the Go-Go's and the transitional stuff. Like the first time I heard New York Dolls was from my Aunt Margaret, and Iggy Pop and Ramones and this stuff. And she was and is just like my favorite. My Aunt Margaret is amazing. So I was instantly interested in it. And I remember in the 4th grade is when I kind of declared myself a punk, even though I had no concept of what it really was. That would be like 1980, right? Mm-hmm. And but I was in. And then she starts dating Mike. And he was in. He's going to gigs, took me to gigs. And so then I was like, I got a real leather jacket and, whatever. And it was on. And about 2 years into that, my pops, Jesus got him off heroin. And he became a born-again Christian, evangelical Christian with the Foursquare Church. Got saved, baptized in the Holy Spirit, speaking in tongues, the whole thing. And then, which I was mortified by. And by now I'm 2 years into being a punk rocker, man. And I'm in. It's on. And that just terrified the shit out of him. Because back then in 1980,
oh yeah.
The average person, walking down the street and the Camaro rolls up and 4 guys get out and call you a faggot and kick your ass, you know, the old ladies in the fucking grocery store are terrified of you, you know, and teachers are screwing with you, and you're getting,
I like
you know,
that though.
well,
The old ladies
some of that
anyway.
stuff that's
I like
fun,
freaking
sure.
out the old ladies.
You know, but you know, there hadn't been Green Day and Offspring and all this stuff yet.
Yeah,
and so it was not cool. It was not.
It didn't go mainstream. Yeah,
no, and it terrified people. And my dad, who was like, I mean, it was just the epitome of Satan. So he's, you know, tossing my records and, you know, God, man, totally trying to dictate the way I dressed. I would leave the house. You know, this is high school. I'd leave the house and change my clothes, walk into school, or go to a friend's house and be myself. And you know, Mike would give me records and I'd have to hide them. And my dad found them and he burned them one time.
Oh, man.
And, God, dude, first press punk rock records, dude.
Yeah, those might be worth money now, too.
But, you know, at one point, though, and so it was just not going to happen. I wasn't convinced of this shit. I didn't want anything to do with this Christian shit. But I went and listened, you know, because I was forced to go to church 3 times a week. So, you know, and I listened. I always listen. All right, what do they got to say? And it wasn't until I was, I think, 19. My dad's now a pastor himself, and he started taking in homeless people, and working full time as a glazer and being a pastor of this church in Southern California, and trying to take in these people into our house. And then some people came along and donated a house. So we started putting people up in that house. And my dad got really overwhelmed.
Excuse me. Which
Yes.
one was Bela Lugosi's house?
We'll get to that.
Oh, okay.
So my dad's just becoming overwhelmed because he's working full time as installing windows and mirrors and shit, and then trying to pastor a church. And then now he's responsible for 15, 20 people in this small house that has been donated to us. And I'm really like rethinking my dad through this process. Like, wow, okay, he's actually doing what this Bible says you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Which I don't see much from the church. And so I remember having a long talk with my dad because he's so, just exhausted and kind of didn't know how to juggle all this. And I said, well, Dad, if this God of yours is real and this is what he's commanded you to do in the Bible, this is what he commands of all of us, quit your fucking job. Quit the glazer job and trust God and have faith. And he did. And within a year, we not only had what was originally called the Jubilee House, we moved into the ranch, which was first we had one ranch, and then it got moved into another house because we needed an even bigger facility, and that was Bela Lugosi's house. Now, come to find out, years later, the entire community of Lake Elsinore, where it was, I was always convinced that this house was Bela Lugosi's old house. Come to find out what it was Ron Ely, the guy who was on the original Tarzan TV series.
I remember.
He lived in this house, but
Okay.
he also did heroin with Bela Lugosi. So Bela Lugosi spent a lot of time in that house, and Bela Lugosi does have a big mansion in Lake Elsinore. And actually, when you see that mansion, it looks like it would be Bela Lugosi's mansion. Ours was like a ranch-style, huge ranch, or like a adobe style. I don't know architecture terms that well, but this was a massive facility. We had industrial kitchen, and we had 60 people living with us. 30 men, 30 women. Right out of prison, right off the street. Anybody came in, they'd get a bed for at least one night, and there was Bible studies throughout the day. We went out, did community service stuff, and so at this point, when this happened, and when I saw this thing grow after telling my dad that, I went all in. I totally got involved in the ministry with my dad. I became a born again Christian, and I had kind of tried out being born again a few times throughout the years, but this time I was like, I'm going to really do this. And, that's what I started the junior high youth group in my dad's church. I would teach Sunday school things. I would do home Bible studies all the time. And we did this for a few years, and we did manage to help quite a few people. And long story short, my dad had gotten ordained by Foursquare, which was a big, huge, important thing to my dad because he was saved through Foursquare originally. And the entire Christian community, really, not the entire, but the vast majority of it, for the most part, just shit all over my dad. Slandered him, talked a bunch of crap. They were all jealous because he was holding up a mirror to their fucking inaction.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot more that happened. A very, very, very close person to me and my father, his name is Liberty. He's an old biker dude, ran a bunch of karate dojos and was a hitman for the FBI, who had gotten saved in prison.
Wow.
He came and lived with us. I can't remember her name right now, but there's an author who does true crime novels that has chapters on liberty and stuff. But anyway, so I'm not just saying shit. He was a hitman for the FBI, and there's court transcripts and him testifying and stuff on it. But this was back when AIDS was still new, and we found out 2 weeks. This was a very, very, very close man to me and my father, and he was central to our ministry. Found out that he wasn't just HIV, he had full-blown AIDS. This was really devastating for me. Rest in peace, Liberty. And then just watching the way that the community had treated my father, that he ultimately gave up the ministry because it was just too much fighting Christians to run it.
Wow.
And so it was really at that point that I kind of tried to be an atheist for a while, and I can't be convinced of it either way. I lean more towards there is some type of greater being, but I have just about every religious book too, Mike.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
And I study them like mad, and and I've taken college courses on world religions and this kind of stuff, and done a lot of philosophy study, and I kind of think where I'm at now, as far as what my perception of what a god is very Eastern as well. I think an analogy I use all the time is there's a manifestation of Vishnu called Indra.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that Indra did and is known for is spreading a net across the universe. It's Indra's net. And what Indra's net does is it's like a mesh net that encompasses the entire universe. And at every connecting point in the mesh of this net, there's a mirror that instantly reflects every other mirror in the net. So it's the oneness of the universe, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And to me, where I'm at now, as I sort of perceive God as being that, God and the universe are the same thing. And we are all equal sort of cells or components of this larger universe, which would ultimately then be parts of what God is. Our consciousness is all, and so what, to me, as far as what might happen when we die, obviously I have no fucking idea. But I would think it's an elevation in our consciousness and connection to this universal consciousness that we're still a part of. But it's not. I'm not saying it's not like sort of reincarnation so much. It's just moving onto another plane, And I don't even know that we would go into it sort of even remembering this life or this understanding of existence that we're experiencing right now, right? Like, but it's all one thing. The butterfly that flaps its wings becomes the tornado, right? It's the
becoming one with the Force.
Yeah.
Sorry, Star Wars reference,
bring it all back to the hero's journey right there.
Back to the hero's journey, which no, you're right, Punker Mike, because George Lucas spent a lot of time with Joseph Campbell when he was coming up with the scripts for Star Wars. It is that's why it's so lasting and it's had such an impact on our culture, because it's the hero's journey. That's why Star Wars fucking rules.
Agreed. Yeah, I don't know who said it, or I think I heard it from Alan Watts. And once again, Alan Watts, he hung out a lot with Joseph Campbell and studied Joseph Campbell. But he kind of was saying that everyone is a god and is God, and we're experiencing life from every aspect in order for God to experience life and see it from every aspect.
Yes, that's very similar to the way I would see it, And and so why is Reverend Aaron called Reverend Aaron?
That's what I want to know right there.
In full disclosure, so I am an ordained minister. Okay, it's not just a name. I'm ordained under the Unitarian Universalist Church, and when I originally became ordained, it was so that I could perform marriages at the Morris Burner Hostel, because they wanted to do like burner weddings and themed weddings and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I did that, and it didn't pan out. We ended up not running that specific kind of a program or whatever. But I mean, look, anybody can spend $35 and be ordained by the UUs. Okay,
I'm an ordained minister from the Church of the Latter-day Dude.
There you go. Well, I should also
spent my $35.
I am also a pope in the Church of the Discordians, and I also would like to take this opportunity to now make you both popes. You are now
the Discordian. I have a friend who's a minister with the Universalist, and he's done the Discordian thing to me before. So that's the universe right there.
And I come to that connection through Robert Anton Wilson, who actually is another person who really informs my sort of spiritual worldview.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a massive, massive fan of Robert Anton Wilson. I've read Prometheus Rising at least 5 times. And quantum psychology, and he's just incredible. And he's really into this sort of oneness of the universe concept too, and sort of working towards an awakening, which to me is very similar to the revolution. So I get ordained because to do churches or to do weddings, and it doesn't pan out. But then, about a year and a half, 2 years ago, when the alt-right really kind of started coming off of the computer and hitting the streets, and I started hearing all their, you got the street preachers, that's an actual group. These guys with the, you're going to hell and all this shit.
Oh yeah, they'll hang out at like outside bars on Friday nights with their big signs and stuff.
Right. Yeah. And they follow the sort of Westboro Baptist model. God hates fags, all this fucking crap.
Yeah.
And it just, I was like, you fucking people don't have the slightest concept about the texts from which you claim to be adhering to. Okay, so however anyone feels about the Bible or the messages in it, and the conflicting facts in it, or whatever, the way it contradicts itself so often. However you feel about the Bible, these people, this new version of evangelicals and alt-right street preachers and Westboro Baptist bigots and shit, they're not drawing. I'm not hearing any of in their rhetoric anything that I've recognize from the Bible. It just really isn't, and they're fucking heretics, straight up. And and I thought, I actually still to this day maintain a deep reverence for what Christians will know what I'm talking about, the red letters. Okay, so for people who don't know what I'm talking about, in many of your
wait,
modern
Mike,
Bible,
don't you? Mike?
No.
You don't remember? Okay. I remember having a Bible, and there were certain scriptures, certain verses in the Bible.
Jesus, yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Sorry, Reverend. Didn't mean to interrupt.
Right. That's all right. No, that's right. So what it is,
Yeah.
what it is anytime a passage that's ascribed to having been said by the Jesus figure will often be printed in red letters. And I have very little, if no issue, with the vast majority of what I read in red letters. And I still maintain that, love your brother, forgive your enemy, help the poor. The least what you do unto the least of these, my brethren, you do unto me. Like I hold these ideologies very dear to my, the way I conduct myself in life. And it motivates much of what I do with Punks for Progress. This is about, okay, let's be educated. Let's do what we can to boost people who are oppressed and maybe give them a little more of a voice, or at least a little bit of support, and try to make a positive difference for people who are oppressed. I just think that that's exactly what Jesus was telling us to do. And that doesn't mean that I think that he is the Son of God. I find that very dubious. I think we are all the sons of God. I think we are all God.
Right.
And I don't need him to die on a cross. I mean, maybe we needed him to die on a cross so that we would actually read the red letters. If he hadn't died on the cross, would we be reading the letters? If he hadn't been martyred? Okay, so I don't know. I don't know the answer to that for sure, but I don't want to in any way discount this man being tortured and, in the way he was and murdered. And I find the resurrection dubious. I'm not convinced of the resurrection. But these messages have value. And God.
Well, so Jesus was a socialist too. I mean,
very much so.
Right? Thank you, Mike.
Yeah.
Let's give it up to Reagan Youth for fucking saying it first. Jesus was a communist, man.
Yeah. Well, yeah. If you want to go to the extreme, really was. Right. Yeah.
Well, it's just a great song. And I remember when that song first came out, I went, "What?" And then really realized, fuck, he kind of is. Like this isn't a diss on Jesus. These guys are actually just kind of saying what he is, because that's the way I took it. Like the song was about pissing off, Christians, and it will. But no, he really matches it. So what happens is I just kind of go, you know what, man? I actually know a hell of a lot about this stuff. I'm not a theologian. I'm not. I have a $30 ordination, but I haven't just read the Bible. I have studied it over years and taught from it over years. I have done this. I have this background, and like I said, I just know way more about this shit than these idiots that are going around claiming to be Christians. And I'm like, you know what? Fucking Reverend Aaron. God damn it, motherfucker. And I'm still going to be a foul-mouthed fucking punk rocker. I still am who I am, but I am an ordained minister, and I do have some very well thought out, while still undeniably flawed perceptions on spirituality and the universe and God and these things, right? And I'm not out to start a church. I'm not out to be anyone's pastor. I don't want people to follow Reverend Aaron, okay? I mean, yeah, I want you to follow Punks for Progress, but, hey, look, we have one of our followers that's been talking to us. They're going to write a piece. I'm not going to give you details, but oh my God, dude. It's a really amazing investigative piece that someone is going to do on a I'll just throw it out there, Chick-fil-A. Yeah, and so that's what Reverend Aaron wants from his flock, for lack of a less disgusting term, is to do your own work, come up with something, contribute it, and we'll boost it for you here at Punks for Progress, right? And so that's where Reverend Aaron's kind of coming from, right? And I don't want to preach to anybody. I don't need you to believe what I believe. I don't even know if I believe it. That brings me back to Robert Anton Wilson, who has a huge impact on my thinking. He was very much preoccupied with the concept of E prime, which is English prime. And it's almost impossible to actually really fully implement in your speech. But the basic notion behind it is that you try to do away with declaratives like the word is. So, for instance, this is a chair I'm sitting in. Okay, that would be kind of inaccurate. The way under E prime and the way Anton Wilson would describe it is, in my current state of neurological understanding, I perceive this to be a chair. So, understanding is determined by new facts, right? Yeah, and you have to be open to new facts that could dismantle your current understanding.
Yes. Yeah.
So I don't even necessarily like the word beliefs. This is just where I'm at right now. You know, and why would I want to make someone else fucking buy into where I'm at? Because I'm not even convinced it's correct. And I think this can lead into us doing some serious fun bagging on evangelicals at this point. But I would think that the inclination to go out and force and really, really try to convince people to buy into your shit is because you probably deep down don't really buy into your shit. But if you can get these other people to buy into it, it validates it for you. And you go, well, maybe I'm onto something.
Exactly.
And this is a lot of, well, that's also relevant to when we get into Jordon Peterson, I think.
Mm-hmm.
This idea of like, well, shit, they're buying my book. So maybe cleaning your room really is it. Maybe feminazis, maybe the feminazis really do hate me, and, there's no substance to back these crap claims. But
and going with that, kind of what Punker Mike was talking about earlier with the Mormon, the missionary thing. I mean, it kind of made me wonder, why are the Mormons sending out 19-year-old, 19 to 21? That's how old the men do it. And the women do it, I think, 21 to like 23 or something. Why are they sending out these young kids to go spread the word of God? It's like, wouldn't you want to send someone who has more life experience and more knowledge rather than someone who just went to the missionary training center for a few months and was crammed with all this stuff? So I think that was a big telling sign there. And I think it's also kind of like you're just saying, almost to indoctrinate the kids, because they go out and they're like, spread the word. I'm like, oh, I convinced two people out of the whole, I was out, because I've heard a lot of stories like, oh, I was out on my mission and I got two people baptized. And I'm like, damn, dude, in 2 years it took you, you got two people baptized. Wow.
Dude,
but they're proud.
My brother didn't get anybody baptized, so he came back with a stigma. Because I think, it's interesting. I've never thought of it that way. But you're absolutely right. It's to indoctrinate them, because this grows their testimony. What's the first thing they do when they get back from their mission? Mm-hmm. They have a homecoming. They get up in church and talk and tell stories of their mission and bear their testimony of the, of how strong their belief in the church is now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it prepares them for marriage. They've been with a companion for the last 2 years. Now they tell them to try to get married within the first 6 months after you get back from your mission.
And all the women. Babies. And all the women in the church, that's like the guys who get back from the mission, they're like the best ones, because these guys were living alone, they're cleaning their own room, and they're Jordon Peterson right there.
They're clean, dude. They're clean cut. They come back. Yeah, they're all clean cut. They haven't
drank or smoked or done drugs.
Spiritual, exactly.
Yeah. So it prepares them for that. And then also, when Reverend Aaron, when you're giving your whole speech about your dad, which that's fucking awesome. I mean, one of my main topics, especially living here in San Diego, is homelessness. And I've just watched it get worse and worse and worse every year. And I think that's so cool that he did that. But all I kept thinking when you're telling that story is Joel Osteen. You know what I'm saying? When the hurricane, what was it? The Houston hurricane with Harvey.
Yes.
Yeah. And he said his church was flooded, and a few people went down there with video cameras, showed that it wasn't flooded, and and that place used to be a basketball arena, for God's sake. I mean, that thing is huge, one of the biggest mega churches in America. And I mean, if you talk about charlatans, I mean, that guy's a prime example, but like we were saying, people go, they donate money, and he's like, well, this must be true because people are buying my bullshit. So yeah, that's what I was thinking. But hey, that's so cool to hear the story what your dad did, and it's just shame that the charlatans and the Joel Osteens of the world kind of drove him out, because he seemed like a good apple in what is a world that there's a lot of not good apples.
And he was DIY as fuck, man.
Mm-hmm.
We made a lot of mistakes, and and there was, it was one of it had that real sort of biker Christian thing. My dad's really into Harleys and stuff, and so we had a lot of ex-bikers staying with us, and from well-known three-piece clubs and stuff like that got on drugs or did time or whatever and needed a place to go when they got out of the joint, stuff like that. And But I remember one of the early things I did with my dad's church before I really got on board was we went and we did some door-to-door shit in Compton. And God, I must have been 17. And we did a bunch of door-to-door things, and then we held a little rally in the park. And this is at the height of the NWA and Rodney King environment and all this stuff. So it was really volatile, and everyone in Southern California is terrified of inner city violence and gangs and all this stuff because this Crips and Bloods things. This is fairly new in our culture here, and there's drive-by shootings on the news constantly and all this kind of stuff. And so I was terrified that we were going to go. I figured for sure we were going to get drive-by shootinged. You know what I mean? And like, and so what I came away from that experience with was we weren't rich, we were poor as fuck, but we were honkies, even though we're part Mexican, but we were very honky looking. And here we are knocking on these people's doors, and we have no understanding of their plight, but we're telling them what they need, and we didn't convince anybody of shit. And then when we went back to the rally, I remember I cringe even thinking back on it. I remember telling, there was some young kind of, bunch of Latino kids, and they were like, in the khaki chino pants and the, whatever, and, slingshot t-shirts and tattoos. And I'm telling them, you think you get a lot of girls, I get a lot of girls. And like this stupid thing about thinking you're cool, you'll get girls. Like a very, very adolescent teenager white boy issue. These people are dealing with like their friends getting shot. And I'm telling you think that's cool and you're going to get laid. They don't give a fuck about getting laid. They care about, and I was really embarrassed when I got home that night, and I knew at that point that I would never do that again, that I would never go and knock on people's doors and tell them what they need in life.
Yeah.
Now, I'll get on the street and run my mouth, like in opposition to things, and invite people to rallies for things I think are positive or whatever. But to tell people what they need to do with their life, I didn't know what I was talking about. I wasn't convinced of it. But here I am preaching to them. And I just think that that's what we see from so much of the evangelical community now. They don't know anything. They know what their fucking pastor told them. That is the same thing that Pat Robertson is talking about on TBN, which is the same fucking bullshit that came down from the Christian Coalition in the 80s. And it's all just so infused now with the far right of the Republican Party, which is just thoroughly wallowing in racism and bigotry, and just xenophobia and this deep-seated hatred of immigrants and anything not white Christian. Disgusting.
Well, and that's kind of, I pulled up some statistics I had that I wanted to share, kind of to, I wanted to merge, the Peterson idea with the religion, and also again with social justice warriors, and run this by you, and then maybe you could kind of segue into the Peterson conversation. But basically, evangelical Protestants. This is a Pew Research poll. This is only between 2007 and 2014. And so basically the overall share of Christian population, it fell from 78% to 70%. And the evangelical Protestant fell by 0.9%. The Catholic religion fell by 3.1%. Mainland Protestant fell by 3.4%. But unaffiliated rose by 6.7%. And then non-Christian faiths rose by 1.2%. So I've been noticing, and I've read a lot of articles and seen a lot of things about, and kind of here also all three of our stories, it shows that people are leaving these institutional religions, and these institutional religions from, Catholics, from the whole priest thing that we're talking about, or, there's a whole plethora of reasons why people are leaving and either becoming just quote unquote spiritual or becoming agnostic or atheist or picking up, Buddhism or something. So people are leaving religion. And the thing about religion is it gives, like we're saying with people, they're like, I won't kill that person because God is going to punish me. So, the thing about religion is it gives people something to believe in larger than themselves. It gives them an outline on life and how to live. And so what I really, this is kind of my formulae, I've been working on this for a while, and why, when I first heard about Jordon Peterson, I kind of was like, wow, this guy, he kind of is saying some cool things. But the more and more I listened to him, I was like, I don't, there's something I just don't like about him. But I realized he talks about chaos as if chaos is this bad, horrible thing, and we need to bring order. And it's also fucked up that he says chaos is feminine, which is like, that's a whole other thing. But it's like, come on, man. But he really preaches about order. And I think people are losing faith in these religions, or these institutionalized religions, and so they need something else to go to. And that's why a lot of people on the left have gone to the social justice warrior type idea, where it's all about emotion and it's all about what I feel is right, which is, it started in a good place, but now it's to the extreme where it's almost hurting itself, because they become a cult-like religion within itself, the social justice warriors. But that's people who identify on the left. And then you have people who identify on the right, who are going to Jordon Peterson because he's giving them order. He's giving them this book, what is it, the 12 rules or something, and he's giving them a context in how to live. So people are leaving religion because religion is dying, the old institutional religion, and that's what we've had forever. And now religion is dead. Eventually, in a few, maybe 100 years or so, institutionalized religion won't exist anymore. But right now we have these two competing worldviews that are emerging, and it's kind of terrifying to me, because I like to talk to everyone, and I'm very critical thinking, and I don't really like to go into the group think mentality. But we have the left, who are hardcore social justice warriors, who they want equality and everything, but they only want equality if you think like them, which is completely, that's not equality. And then you have the right, Jordon Peterson types, who they want order and they think chaos is bad, where if you don't have chaos, how are you going to grow? How are you going to evolve? Chaos it makes you mad, and it brings change. It makes you evolve. So chaos is a great thing. So right now we have these two competing worldviews, and they're competing. And the scariest thing to me is one is going to win. And as I see it, I see both of these worldviews as terrifying personally. So that's my whole, and then when we were talking before the show, that's kind of how these three ideas came into it. So I wanted to get your feedback on that, really.
Oh, wow. Well, so I want to get into all of that. I think first I'm going to play a video here in a minute. It's a short clip from the video I just did on Jordon Peterson, and it really goes into the hero's journey that we've been talking about a lot. So you're going to get a real good explanation of what that is, for those who aren't familiar and hearing us talking about it, going, what the fuck is the hero's journey? So we'll play that in a second. But, this thing about chaos, the universe is chaos. This God, universe, chaos. This is God. This is a wonderful thing, or it's a not wonderful thing. It's both, and it's neither. That's a very Robert Anton Wilson perspective, but it's all of that, because it's everything. Because the universe is everything, and chaos is part of that. And the only constant in life is change. Yeah. And the sooner you embrace that, and be the water, as you were saying, be Siddhartha. Go sit down and have a chat with the river sometime. Okay. You do your soul some good if you have one. I don't know. I don't know. But I think that is so important. And Peterson is just such a perversion of that, to say, oh my God, the chaos, be afraid of the chaos, stay at home, clean your room, don't do it until you got all your. Who are you to go out and change the world? Yeah, you haven't got your own inner demons figured out, and it's scary out there, and so actually, and then as far as what you're saying about the social justice warriors, we're going to get into that after we talk about Jordon Peterson. But, the one thing I just would want to clarify, and not necessarily push back, but I just don't want to equate the left as being social justice warriors.
No. It's a fraction of the left, just like how the alt-right, just like how the alt-right is a faction of the right. They're not. Everyone on the right isn't alt-right, but that's the main world. And I would say that's people who, lacking religion, are being pulled into this Jordon Peterson ideology or the social justice warriors. I really think that's kind of the case.
No, absolutely. I so agree with you there. And it is why Jordon Peterson is gaining prominence. And I am fairly convinced that, yes, religion is very much so declining. And, you took that back to 2007. I mean, imagine us now as compared to the 1950s. Everybody was a fucking Christian.
Oh, I'm
sure.
What I mean?
Yeah. And so it's massively declined. But we haven't. There is not something to. We need those mechanisms, and you learn this from Joseph Campbell. Those mechanisms for belief and spirituality in these tales and these religious tales and folk tales throughout history, these have manifested in the human condition for a reason, to bring us comfort and inspiration and motivation and these kind of things. But so now that the foundational, the age-old foundations for those outlets, they are waning, and there isn't something to replace it with, and this is a problem. And and I'm hopeful that it will be replaced by individuality and the importance of the individual and working as a community in mutual aid and respecting people not as groups, but individuals within groups, as opposed to we all have to get together and believe the same shit and then go out and make more people believe our shit. And then we'll be that, this thing of stay away from the chaos. This creates an authoritarian. This bridge. What was the you mentioned the converse of that being for Peterson? It just allows for an authoritarian.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Definitely. Because
presence to just instantly step into your life.
Yeah, because you keep referring his name. His main mantra is the clean your room, and get your own shit together before you can go out and change the world. Where if you go back and look at a lot of the revolutionary of America, Thomas Jefferson and George Washington, a lot of these people, they owned slaves, and they were huge hypocrites when it came to writing the Constitution. But I think they kind of, in a way, almost knew that, and they had the foresight to not really write about slavery in the Constitution, because I think they kind of knew that it was going to change, but they couldn't change it. Same thing with, Dr. Martin Luther King. He wasn't a perfect human being, but look at the great change that he brought about. So if these people were prescribing to the Jordon Peterson mentality, they'd be like, well, maybe I shouldn't go out and preach revolution, or I shouldn't go out and try to help change because I'm not a perfect person. And then where would we be?
Yeah, and then you hear from followers of his, who are you? Who are you to get out and blah, blah, blah? Oh, you're so awesome. You think you're such hot shit, and you can get out telling people what? No, I don't think I'm such hot shit. But if someone's not out saying something, then it doesn't get said.
Yeah.
And I hear this other person trying to say it, and people are screaming at him. So I'm going to go stand next to that person. Make it a little easier for them to say it. And I'm flawed as fuck. But you know what? Let's go ahead and let's play this clip, and then let's come back in and really get into this hero journey stuff a little bit more. How's that sound, guys?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sounds great.
Peterson's perversion of Joseph Campbell and the hero's journey. The hero's tale, or the hero's journey, as illumined by Joseph Campbell, is one of taking action, engaging the world, confronting its evil righteously, and in turn learning from that experience. It's a self-reliant journey of discovery, not just to the other end of the world's greatest obstacles, but to the other end of our own inner struggles as well. And most importantly, how we take personal responsibility for the world around us and the part we choose to play or not play in it. Jordon Peterson's take on the hero's journey is a sick, sad, convoluted, self-destructive perversion that rallies its warriors to inaction, self-pity, and reactionary anger.
So, I mean, there's rules for operating in chaos, right? Because that's when you're in the belly of the beast or the belly of the whale and you're underwater. You're in the underworld. You're in the underworld in chaos. And so that's a really cool thing to know, Joe. So imagine that the normal world of mankind is inside that dominance hierarchy where everything is going well. Because nothing abnormal is happening. You're getting what you need and you want, and your conscious knowledge suffices, right? Okay, but then something tilts and that structure no longer works. So where do you end up? You end up in the underworld. That's what happens when your partner of 20 years has a long-term affair and you find out about it. It's like you thought you knew where you were, but you didn't. And now that you found out, you don't know where you are. Well, when you don't know where you are, you're in the underworld. Right, and that's where the unconscious forces play. Those are the gods. That's why there's gods in the underworld. And people go to the underworld all the time. It's chaos and fear and depression, hopelessness and imaginativeness. It's everything. It's
and this
chaos.
realm is terrifying to people.
Terrifying and promising. Terrifying and promising, because dragons have gold. Because it's always, the unknown has two things. Just like the future. It's like, look out, it'll do you in. And look out, it offers everything to you. That's the underworld. That's why the hero always goes into the underworld to find a cave full of gold that's guarded by a dragon.
In The Hobbit, literally.
Yeah, well, and that's Beowulf, right?
Yeah,
that's the oldest story of mankind. It's really our oldest story.
Wow.
And so that the underworld is chaos. It's chaos, and down there's all sorts of play of possibility. And the reason the frog was the guardian of chaos is because the frog is this thing that doesn't fit into categories. You see, because it's partly water, it's partly land. It's tadpole, yet it's adult, right? So it's like a fish, and then it's like an animal. It doesn't fit. And it's things that don't fit that blow apart the categories, right? Well, that's what the transsexuals do to the category of gender, for example. And that puts you in this state of chaos. It puts you in this state of chaos. And that's what we're in now. We're in a state of chaos. And so what are the rules for operating in a state of chaos? Well, as far as I can tell, the fundamental rule when operating in chaos is tell the truth, tell the truth, tell the truth. So, for example, if you...
For the people that want to navigate this successfully.
Yep. All you've got, that's what you've got, as a shield and a weapon. And that's the guidepost. That's the way through. Well, and you see that in hero stories all the time, you know. So it's allegiance to the truth, but the truth is a strange thing. It's a very strange thing. Often the hero in a story has to assimilate their dark side before they're capable of telling the truth. Right? In The Hobbit, for example, he has to become a thief. Right? Because he has to get tough. That's the thing. That's the thing. Also, the thing about telling the truth is that it's not for the naive. Not at all. And partly it's because it burns off dead wood. It's partly because it hurts people's feelings. It's a sword. So you have to be a warrior.
Wow. A truth warrior. In this time of chaos.
Right.
What emerges from this?
Right. Sometimes it's catastrophe. That's the thing about these categories. They're real. They're real. And you know, the optimists that I hear say, well, the pendulum swings and then it swings back. And I think, yeah, well, sometimes it it takes 100 years to swing back, and it takes a hell of a lot of people out on the way. And sometimes it never swings back at all. So, you know, sometimes people go out to fight a dragon and it just eats them, or it burns them. And that's the end of that.
Right.
And like, we're in an unstable period of time at the moment, in a transition period of some sort. I can't put my finger on it, but I know that that's partly why what I've been saying has been resonating with people.
That's a very, very important thing for people to hear. It's a very important thing for people to hear. So many times, I mean, here's a perfect example that people will understand and be able to resonate with. It'll resonate with them, rather. When you see people that have a lot of inspirational memes on like Instagram and Facebook, they're almost all fucked up.
Jordon Peterson speaks of the underworld and slaying of dragons et al. In the traditional metaphorical sense, of course, and in much the style popularized by Campbell. But Peterson casts his heroes as having the underworld thrust upon them, as opposed to something a proactive warrior engages purposefully. While Campbell's hero seeks out the dragon, Peterson's is suddenly confronted by it. While Campbell's hero mindfully seeks out and engages the chaos of the unknown, Peterson's hero finds himself forced into the midst of it, bereft of foreknowledge, as if abruptly awakened to some immediate existential dread. Joseph Campbell tells us that heroes find the wisdom they otherwise lack in the quest to engage the dragon, in the engagement of the unknown, in the struggle against the odds, in leaving the familiar and the safe for the dangerous and the unknown. Peterson, in his ridiculous self-help book, tells his readers not to engage injustice until they have figured out all their own personal demons. He, in fact, tells his followers that they need to clean their fucking rooms. Peterson does give his followers a dragon to fear, the social justice warrior / cultural Marxist / whatever, but he tells them only that they must not stand for it anymore. It being equality for all otherwise marginalized peoples, but more specifically, women. What we thinking people with an ability to empathize understand clearly to be simply the struggle for equality for all, Peterson sees as a threat to some imaginary, historic, divine role of patriarchy being all things somehow equal under threat. What Campbell recognized as the fight for injustice and wisdom so intrinsic to the long story of the search for the betterment of the broader human condition, Peterson sees as all he and his followers should be ultimately crusading against. Or, more precisely, cowering from and crying about. Peterson tells his followers they must tell the truth. But anyone espousing a truth that challenges his own becomes the embodiment of the dragon, of chaos, of evil itself, the social justice warrior. What this glaringly hypocritical and emotionally stunted hack is doing is couching his self-victimizing, defeatist view of some so-called heroic patriarchy in the ageless, inspirational tales of the true hero's journey. Peterson has taken a timeless understanding of self-sacrifice, courage, honor, and universal truths for all people, regardless of gender or ethnic or national origin, and regurgitated it as some justification for specifically white men to feel like suffering victims of some fucking imaginary oppression. And I, frankly, fail to see how this is not, on some level, a purposeful perversion of Campbell meant to sell Peterson's own self-loathing to his followers, thereby justifying it for himself on some even deeper, more repressed level.
Okay, I've got to be honest. That little video is the first thing I've ever seen or heard of Jordon Peterson. So.
Well, you're not alone. A lot of people I talk to are just kind of, I kind of take for granted, like, fucking Jordon Peterson, and they'll be like, who? I'm like, oh, because he's, as Michael Eric Dyson said, trending #1 on Twitter. Best-selling author, New York Times best-selling author. I wish he'd quote me in his book.
He's huge on YouTube. I mean,
But but he's kind of a fairly new phenomenon. And one of the things I think is, to me, I mean, he seems so extremely right-wing, but I think what is kind of shocking when I first started kind of posting about him and stuff was that liberals, they would be like, nah, I don't think you got Jordon Peterson right. You should watch more of his videos. And I'd be like, no, I've been watching a lot of his videos. That's why I'm kind of posting about him. And he's tripping me out, and I don't like him. And so I was really kind of taken aback that liberals were not necessarily, they're not like deep-throated like apologists for him like the far right is. You know what I mean? But that they were intrigued by him.
Well, because he's quite articulate, and he's also kind of well spoken, but he's not like the average Richard Spencer or the average hardcore crazy alt-righter. He really makes it's very nuanced in what he says, and that's why it took me a while. Something rubbed me wrong about him, and I couldn't quite put my finger on it. It took me a long time to actually get to the point where I didn't really like him. And I was reading a piece on the New York Times that they did, like a profile on him. And you could tell the writer was liberal, and she just did a really bad job at really picking him apart. And she just kind of went for the easy, low insults. She was saying, oh, he tells people to clean his room, but his desk is a mess. And I'm like, that's not, you need to dig deeper. And one more thing before I throw it back to you, Reverend Aaron, with Jordon Peterson, once you notice and you start watching a lot of his interviews, I don't know if you've noticed this, but whenever he's asked a question, he never really answers the question. He says, he dissects, I saw something, they asked, do you believe in God? And he's like, well, what do you mean by belief? And what do you mean by God? Because if you mean belief by this belief and this blah, blah, and he'll start quoting things. And so, and then by the time you actually get him to say, what does he believe in God? He's like, well, maybe I live my life as if there's a God. I'm like, dude, you could have just said that in the very beginning without going on a 5-minute rant of trying to push back against the interviewer. Have you seen that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. What it is that he will not be held to any specific position ever on anything. You cannot get him to say. And then another one of the what was it? I think it's a BBC. I can't remember what the outlet was, but they did an interview with him where it was the person interviewing him, her pushback every time was, so what you're saying is, and then would come up with some analogy, and he'd go, no, that's not what I'm saying. And then go into this deep, long. And so what he does, the reason that I think he's obviously much harder to critique and dissect than a Steven Crowder or a Ben Shapiro, because these guys just post things that are just, just disgusting on
horrible.
Their face.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And just very easy to debunk and deconstruct. But because they're not using any type of actual academic method. Now, Peterson is a professor at, in Toronto. So
or he was. I don't think he is anymore.
I hope not. That would be great.
I think he took a leave, but
because he's making $50,000 a month on Twitter or on Patreon, and his suits are looking good now. But what he does in the way he delivers his rhetoric is he couches it in the proper sort of academic framework. So he'll give you his two sort of examples that lead to his conclusion, and he'll dilute each of those original examples in long drawn out rhetoric. And God, there's a word for it. It's not gobbledygook. There's an actual specific term. I always forget it, but it's just when they sort of bombard you with so much information and stuff at once that you can't. How do you hit all 10 of those?
Yeah.
You know? And then, but that's just his one first premise, and then he goes that all of that gobbledygook now sets it up for his second premise that is the same thing again, the same sort of process again, that then leads to the conclusion, and you're kind of left with going. So what you're saying is, and then he's got you. He's got you.
But just what you said, the academic, and I think it's, it's pretty obvious, and we can all admit, the universities and the left, pretty much all of the left is very academically minded, and the universities are, tilted towards the left. So he's using the left's verbiage and, style in order to deliver a right-wing, worldview and talking point. And I think that's why a lot of liberals do push back when you are saying things, I think.
Sure. And that's absolutely right. And in that process too, what he's doing is, because he's, given you 10 things for each of his two, premises, so 20 things, you can kind of just project onto it whatever you already think. It really makes it easy for you to hear what you just kind of already want to hear. He's sort of a walking confirmation bias for you, if you're on the right, especially, so that's why incels flocked him. You're never going to be able to find, well, he did come out and he did say forced monogamy, and he's been trying to walk that back and not with any success whatsoever. But it's really, I think it's going to be very hard to find something in Jordon Peterson's rhetoric that goes, oh, see, look, he just said incel is good. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no.
But he sure makes incels feel good about themselves.
Yeah.
And he gives them, and so, but it is, so yeah, it's almost like his rhetoric and the framing of his rhetoric is a positive dog whistle to liberals who are used to framing our discussions that way, to say,
exactly,
look, I have sources for the I'm not just going to come out and go blap and say this thing. I'm going to, it's like when me and Mike first started doing the show, he'll tell you, I would get so frustrated because I'm like, Mike, I do these long buildups to make my point. And then, I'll set up all these premises and then right when I'm about to get to the payoff, you will interject and kind of cut me off, and now I have to reset it up again. And, be aware that there's a payoff coming, and he's gotten, and he understood, and he's great about it now. But it's a tedious, difficult way to get information across to people. But if you really want to make an academic point, that's how you have to do it. And so he's couched himself in this shit, and in that delivery, and then, and again, so. My first introduction to him was when I was putting together the theocratic fascism documentary that I put together. And it culminates in a big segment about Kekistan and KEK and this whole weird subculture. And I wasn't aware of Jordon Peterson, but I found his when he was on Joe Rogan. And I found actually the little segment of when him talking and explaining what it was very useful. I used it in my film, but I got to tell you, like your experience, Mike, was I didn't know what it was, but there was just something I really didn't like about him. But and I didn't watch the whole Joe Rogan interview. I just stole that little segment and threw it in my film, and I'm glad I did to this day. It's still a great description, but it was nagging at me. There was just something weird about him that I didn't like, so I kind of went back and watched it, and then really got into the segment where he's talking about chaos and the drag and all this stuff, and I'm going, this is Jordon Peterson, or this is Joseph Campbell, but this is not Joseph Campbell. This is how Joseph Campbell talks, but he's not saying what Joseph Campbell does. This is actually really contrary to Joseph Campbell. Joseph Campbell, as I have found him over the years to be a very inspiring influence, and about sort of taking responsibility for yourself and where you're at in the world, and engaging life, and learning from tough experiences, and then sharing your knowledge with that with your loved ones and your community, and starting all over again, the cyclical patterns of life and this kind of stuff. It's very entropic.
So you're saying, I'm sorry, I really don't want to cut you, but if you're saying that if Jordon Peterson wrote Star Wars, then after Aunt Bew and the uncle got killed by the stormtroopers, he would say to Luke would be like, oh, I can't go out and fight the Force. I need to go fix this harvest because, my family's not around anymore. I need to stay here on Tatooine and deal with my stuff and not go out and fight the Force.
No, right. And Obi-Wan, being the Jordon Peterson in this scenario, would say, oh, no, Luke, you clean your room. You need to, fields. You need to get to, he would perpetuate what Uncle
Owen was. That was
a
horrible Obi-Wan, by the way.
Yeah.
Jordon Peterson, actually. But he would perpetuate what Uncle Owen was constantly telling.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. That was my point. Yeah. So that's how the hero's journey. He's distorting it. That's what you're saying.
Totally, and it was really off-putting when I saw it, when I that clicked into that. And this was before he had made the connection with the forced monogamy, and the incels had really, had come out that they had really, were really backing him and all that stuff. But then that's what started me down going, all right, who the fuck is this guy? And then you get into finding about his takes on cultural Marxism and postmodernism, which is just a total travesty bullshit lie, which is this notion that all social justice warriors, literally everyone on the left is a social justice warrior, which is also being informed by cultural Marxists, which let's just ignore the dog whistle to cultural Bolsheviks, which was Hitler's fucking rhetoric. Okay. So when he talks about cultural Marxists, damn well, and you better be assured that every fucking racist out there went, cultural, I'm going to pay attention to Jordon Peterson. Cultural Marxist is bad.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. And then what he does is he ties up this thing of, so this speaks to what you were talking about before we played the video, Mike, about how, we have this big loss of religion and what are we replacing it with? And so it goes from the, this notion of, all the social justice warriors are all of the left. Mm-hmm. And they're being informed by cultural Marxists. And what the cultural Marxists now are is the postmodernist concept of the post-God. So, Peterson couches a lot of his rhetoric. He likes to quote Nietzsche a lot and Carl Jung and this notion of the, post-God era. Mm-hmm. There's the term that we hear thrown around a lot now is post-truth era also, which is really more related to facts and politics and media, but it does tie into this. We're in this desperate place. We're in the underworld now because we don't have God and religion anymore.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly. And that's why he's saying chaos is bad and we need the order.
We need the order, which is that's what I wanted to say earlier was the converse of the chaos. When he says what we want order, that's fascism, man. That is straight up fascism. Fascists have always told you, I will bring order to the chaos in your community. These people that are doing this, you're suffering this and that. I'm going to order it all. We're going to be uniform. Mm-hmm. Group think. This is Orwellian. This is 1984. And the strongman figure,
Instead of addressing why is there this chaos in society right now? Why is it? Why are people leaving religion? And maybe we should address what's going on. And I think we were talking earlier about the world being pulled together online, and we're creating a new where everyone's connected all throughout the world. We're entering a new era almost. And I think there's going to be growing pains in this new era that we're entering. And I think, like we were saying, the alt-right and the white, quote unquote, white male Trump voter, it kind of terrifies them about this new world that we're going into.
I agree.
Right. I absolutely agree. I couldn't agree more. I've been saying this a lot and writing about it too, is that this, like you're saying, this is the first time we are globally connected. We are brand new to this. There's a bunch of people who think they're really adept because they've been online since, the first Apple computer and, in the shitty chat rooms, and they got it figured out and they know how to hack, and you're still new. You're still new. We do not know how to properly understand navigating being connected globally. And it's also the first time where your average, really depressing, misanthropic, sex-deprived, disturbed person who has no friends and sits in his basement all alone now can get on a computer and connect with another person in that same sad disposition and support each other. And then create chats and group forums where they support each other and bolster each other and then encourage each other in these behaviors. This is fucking brand new. And then we don't know how to respond to that yet, they can gain prominence. And the greatest manifestation of this is the rise of the alt-right. Like I said earlier, getting off the computer and taking to the streets. We as a species, we didn't know how to deal with that right off the bat.
Yeah.
And Peterson, he in a way, he does give people something, at least rhetoric, as a replacement for this loss. He tells them the chaos is caused by cultural Marxists who have aligned with the postmodernists, and they're trying to get rid of God. They want a post-God, a godless future where it's all about identity politics and being led by emotion, which is just such bullshit. That's such an insulting lie of the left. The vast majority of the left, there's definitely exceptions, but and the people that I think that we can kind of maybe lump into your average stereotypical social justice warrior might be an exception. But for the vast majority of the left, we tend to research the things that we think. And then when we come out and start saying, we're like, no, I actually was reading this article, and so then I read this other thing, and then I was I saw this documentary, and then I'm kind of thinking, blah. It's not that we have been tricked by this crazy imaginary cabal of atheist social justice warrior feminazis, postmodernist cultural Marxists. It's that, we just don't buy into my room being clean, the do all end all importance. And you know what? How about I leave my apartment a fucking mess and go out and stand next to someone who's being oppressed so that they can be less oppressed? Why does my house have to be fucking clean to do that?
Well, because that stops you from going out and making change. Like you're saying, it's very fascist, because it stops the change, it stops the evolution. Just like in the very beginning of the podcast, we were talking about our transformation through spirituality and religion. I mean, just imagine if me and Punker Mike, we just didn't question anything, we would have went on our missions and became Mormons and, did that whole thing. But then who would we be? Where would we be in our life? And same thing with you and your dad, you ended up accepting it and kind of evolving with it. And that's the chaos that I think we need to accept, the chaos. And that's the hero's journey. And that's totally what it all goes to that. So it all ties back in.
It all ties back in. And it is all of our individual hero's journey. And listen, that doesn't make us special that we went on these different hero's journeys. This is the story of the human species.
Yeah.
Go on your hero's journey. Look for it. Accept the call. One of the things I love best about Campbell's understanding of the hero's journey is when you do say, okay, I'm going to do this, what's the next step? Someone comes along to help you. And I think that should be a pretty good indication if you are on a hero's journey. If you start getting out and doing your thing and you got to fight people the whole time and everyone's telling you you're an idiot and a fascist and a racist, you might not be on a hero's journey. But they like to convince themselves that they are the hero and the maverick warrior because look at the way, Tiny and Patriot Prayer and Joey Gibson, these people and the Proud Boys, they go out and just beat people up or get beat up and then think that they're heroes because they stood up for it. Well, what did you learn? What did you bring back to your community that's useful?
Well, a lot of a lot of the alt-right and a lot of them, they won't really accept that change or try to evolve. Where, me, if I'm wrong, I'm the first to admit it and actually change my argument on that. And that's the number one reason why I like to talk to people on the right. And really, I want to try to understand where they're standing and how they think, how they got to that notion. And whenever I talk to anyone I don't agree with, I'm never talking to them to try to change their perspective. I'm always talking to them in order to clarify my own perspective or evolve if I need to. Sure. And that's kind of, and strengthen my own argument. And, if they get something out of it, then so be it. So, okay, let's segue kind of into the whole, this is my question for you, segue into the social justice warriors. We have this idea on my podcast, the Punk Rock and Politics podcast. I've had, 2 schools of thought, and I've talked to one band, Cheap Perfume. They're out of Portland, Oregon, and they have a song, It's Okay to Punch Nazis, and that's kind of the whole premise is, is it okay to punch Nazis? And, me, yeah, I fucking hate Nazis. But the thing is, us on the left, and then the like you clarified for me earlier, which I thank you, and you're totally right, is the group within the left that are social justice warriors. It's important that we on the left and them don't label everyone on the right as Nazis. And then if we label everyone on the right as Nazis, then we should just be punching everyone on the right. And then, that's, back to religion. An eye for an eye keeps the world blind. So, I think it's important to talk to people that we don't agree with. But what's your whole thought on punching Nazis? And I mean, if you can punch Richard Spencer, sure, but let's say it's okay to punch Richard Spencer because he's a fucking asshole,
Sure.
So what's your thing on that?
No, thank you. I'm glad, and I'm glad you did, because I was just about to segue us into this.
Okay, cool.
Anyway, nice. So thank you.
Sorry, I'm stealing the host position. I'm sorry.
No. You saved me from having to do it, and it was perfect because you set me up great. I do have a number of things to say about it. Now, first and foremost, I will say it's okay to punch Nazis. I'm not into it. I'm not into it. I'm not into punching Nazis at all. It's not my fucking thing. I've punched people in my life and it hurts. I hate it. It doesn't feel good. I don't want to go out and punch Nazis. I'd rather organize, proper, action against them and expose them properly and do my research and do my homework. That's the way I punch Nazis.
Yeah,
right? That's my thing. But I am okay. You want to go out and punch a Nazi, I'm not going to tell you what to do and what not to do. But, if you get arrested, that's on you too. What can I say? But the problem is, and this is where the social justice warrior thing comes in. And again, I will just clarify, just to be clear, that the social justice warrior, the actual people that I think that we could probably realistically point to and go, you are a social justice warrior, is a fairly small faction of the left. And but one of the things that's really indicative, I think we can point to and say social justice warrior type behavior, is to label everyone on the right a Nazi.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Me and Mike, we did that a little bit on our show at the very beginning, right around the election. We made that mistake, and but very quickly, it was actually on April 15th. When I went to the big, huge clash in MLK Park between Antifa and all the alt-right. And that's when I really got a first glimpse into all the different groups there and understood, wait, there's a lot of different groups here that have different ideas. And some of them aren't Nazis, and some of them are. And some of them aren't racist, and some of them are.
Yes, yeah.
And so one of the things that I'm still proud of to this day, that when our video isn't, at this time, everyone was like, Antifa versus Nazis or, whatever. Okay. My video was like, Antifa and Black Bloc versus alt-right Trump supporters and others, or something to that effect. Right. Mm-hmm. And, because I think that's very important, because if you call them, this Proud Boy a Nazi and his best friend's a black guy, well, you're done. Your argument's over.
Yes, yeah.
He's not a Nazi. So I've gotten very comfortable with the word bigot, though, to refer to just about everyone on the right.
not everyone on the right is a bigot. Okay. But man, where we're at right now, this is the distinction I make. In June of 2018, if you are still an avid Trump supporter, you're a fucking bigot. You're a fucking bigot.
Or just really ignorant to what's going on.
But that's what's motivating you to still support him. Because what are they going to say? Because I really like what he's been doing. Well, what has he been doing except shitting on brown and black people? Mostly brown people, and destroying homes.
Well, if you're rich, you got a tax cut. So, I mean, I understand why
that's
the
a different
rich,
class. I'm kind of talking about the average Joe on the street.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And, but these distinctions are so important. And a lot of times, I think we talked about this off air a little, you and I, Mike, but a lot of times, you'll see this quote unquote social justice warrior trying to kind of go at an alt-righter, and then they'll call him a Nazi or whatever. And then the alt-right, they've got you now. They've got you. And they're going to come back on you hard. And then the social justice warrior doesn't have a response. And so that's when all the insults and the ad hominem start coming out of the leftist.
Mm-hmm.
And then the alt-right goes, see, all you liberals, all you social justice warriors, it doesn't matter that I'm an anarchist. I'm still all you social justice warriors and all you liberals. Well, I mean, they're not saying that to me, but I now get lumped in with them.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, exactly.
The right is doing to us what they criticize us for, lumping them all into the, thing. You're all this one thing, but now we're all the social justice warriors, and we're whatever, that one thing. And so I'm going to get accused, and Mike, you're going to get accused, and Punker Mike's going to get accused of label. I get it. We get it all the time before I started turning off the comment section on our YouTube channel. But we would get it all the time about, you're calling us all racist, and that's what you guys do. And it's like, we don't do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You're assuming we do because that's been done to you by a social justice warrior before.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's frustrating as fucking hell. Now, with all that said, it's hard for me to hate on quote unquote social justice warriors, because I think there was probably a stage in my life where I was there. I would say thankfully to Indra's net and the universe or whatever, that there wasn't social media when I went through that phase in my progression or evolution or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I had, when I was in my early years and voted for Bill Clinton twice and thought I knew my shit. I thought I was a fucking radical lefty. I was not by any stretch. And the reason I thought that was because I was not well read. I didn't understand Marx. I hadn't understand political philosophy, the Enlightenment, all the things that had gotten us to, who we are. I hadn't read all, the Federalist Papers, and I hadn't read Kropotkin or Malatesta yet. So I assumed I was this great radical, and I'm going out and I've always had a big fucking mouth, and I've always been super outspoken and forceful with my ideas. So I was pushing garbage that I didn't really understand then.
Yeah.
And so I think I probably would have fit pretty close into that mold of what we refer to as social justice warriors. But so that's kind of the way I perceive that behavior, as like, you need a couple more books.
Mm-hmm, yeah. And they are the minority, and it's a very small group, but I think we're saying off air that it's such low hanging fruit for the right and the alt-right to attack and then glump all the liberals into that group. But they're just a very vocal minority. They're very vocal and they're very politically active, which is awesome. I think that's great that they're very politically active. But like you said, you need to be able to back up your emotions with facts and statistics and have a sound argument. Because if you're just out there pushing your emotions, it's not going to be good. And you're just saying, I'm happy that there wasn't really social media back when Bush was president, because I would call Bush a Nazi and a bigot. And I look back, I'm like, no, he wasn't that. He's probably a war criminal, but he's not a Nazi or a bigot. I mean, that's kind of personal opinion. But yeah, it's really interesting how, you can't just lump everyone into one group, because it's a mosaic of different types of thinking.
It is, and I think one of the things that might have made me a little more understanding or adept to being a little more patient with it is, I grew up a punk rocker. Punk rock is an amalgamation of a bunch of different little subcultures that have all their unique little characteristics that are all part of punk rock, and I relate. And this is why I was never a goth or a skinhead or all these things, but I love all of these different, and all of them are incorporated into my personal interpretation of what punk rock is. So I have always seen the world as different affinity groups or subculture groups or just the different, sub communities that we relate to. And this is how the human species works, which fits very nicely into my evolution into being an anarcho-syndicalist, right? Because it's about organizing separate groups together, equally, and, and the importance of mutual aid and anyway, and all this stuff. And, but yeah, this people are going to gravitate towards like-minded people. Mm-hmm. And so that's how you're going to coalesce into this group of social justice warriors. This is also another new part of coming to grips and understanding being globally connected for the first time in recorded history, right? And this is the social justice or leftist side learning. But it is an evolution. And now that they're out there, if those are, we on the far left, we have a real inclination to late shame these people and be pretty shitty to them. And I'm probably guilty of it too, and because it's frustrating because, like I said earlier, for one, we get lumped in with their behaviors. Mm-hmm. And it's like you're missing it. And you're, in a lot of ways, you're doing a disservice to our struggle against this rise of fascism by not properly understanding the elements that are at play here. And now there's times when I'm arguing with social justice warriors and an alt-right guy at the same time.
Oh, yeah, all the time. Well, I saw an article that was talking about how we need to end Father's Day because it builds to the patriarchy and all that, which, it's like, I just don't understand that type of logic.
Right. Well, and so what I think that is, bro, is it's when you don't have a holistic critique of essentially the way the world functions, like, I'll just say it, if you don't have a Marxist critique of our society, then you don't understand what's going on because you don't have a proper critique of capitalism. So if you don't understand the broad macro, concept of capitalism, then you're just kind of nitpicking at each individual thing. So as each news story or travesty comes in the news each day, you're just kind of nitpicking and trying to figure out, okay, what could have caused this? So that's why you hear a lot of, well, what I think it is because of this and that. You'll hear Marxists say, well, it's because of capitalism doing this, and then it had this effect, and then now this person is responding in this way. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But much different. It's not about what I think or what my opinion is. It's like, no, capitalists do this, and then it results in this, and then it has this effect, and then this happens, and then people react this way. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you're tying it into each thing, as opposed to, why did Trump do this thing with North Korea? It's like, well, do you understand what's going on with Iran and Saudi Arabia and how that relates to Israel? Mm. What has that got to do with it?
Well, today Trump met with Kim Jong-un today, and on CNN, I couldn't even count how many times they said, there's a lot of untapped resources in North Korea. This would be a huge boom for the economy. And that was their spin on it. Oh, how much coal, how many, minerals and all these things, because no one's mined them there. Ooh, this would be a huge boom for the economy. And that's the capitalist thing. And I think has a lot to do with the North Korea situation as well, because it'll be a huge boom for the capitalists. And I agree. Absolutely. I think most problems come down to the division of labor versus moral solidarity. The Marxist main saying is, and that's what's going on right now. And we really need to focus on the class struggle. And that's also, Bernie Sanders gets beat up a lot for this. And, I would get beat up for this a lot because, it's really complicated versus the race struggle and definitely people who are in different ethnic groups are being shit on by Trump. But if you are to just say that it's only a class struggle, you're almost, a lot of people are saying, oh, Bernie Sanders is just like Trump because he only says it's only a class struggle. But I don't know, that's a very interesting way. How can we fix racism and fight racism? Or do we fix the economy and the capitalists and the growing separate, the growing divide of the ultra rich versus everyone else? Is that going to solve the racism? I don't know. Or do we have to tackle the racism first? That's a very big thing on the left too, that I think a lot of people on the right don't even know that argument is going on within the left.
Right. Well, so I got two things. First of all, I just wanted to point out, there's the problem with CNN. That's why CNN is bad. Not this fake news crap that they all write.
They're capitalists.
They're capitalists. That just tells you everything you want to know. They're like, ooh, we get to exploit people.
Yeah, they were hate Trump because of Russia for, all day. And then he's out talking to Kim Jong-un and they're, wow, maybe this isn't that bad. Maybe Trump is pretty good. Yeah, exactly. It's like, wow, you guys flipped on Trump pretty quick.
Yeah, that's CNN for you in a nutshell. Now, but this thing, so I would say, bro, the way you address and tied into this is the total misunderstanding of the right about identity politics and stuff too. So when you look at so you have to understand, yes, it is a class struggle first. It has to be couched in the class struggle first. So that's the holistic macro view. But the micro view is you have to understand that we are individuals within the class struggle. And we have subgroups of groups of individuals within the broader class struggle. And some of those might be African-American community. It might be Muslims. It might be the LGBTQA plus community. Okay. Punk rock, whatever it is. And each of these do have different unique experiences within the broader framework of this capitalist class struggle that's, class struggle created by capitalism that we all live under. So if you are you have to address on the individual level the needs of the individual. But if you do it from an understanding of the broader class struggle and how their individual struggle is affected by that larger class struggle, you can then not only be more effective in their personal life, you will be contributing to the addressing the broader issues within the class struggle. Does that make sense?
Yeah. But it's a fine line because, a lot of people have criticized Bernie Sanders for only really focusing on the class struggle, which he's more recently been pushing over and trying to understand the race and the certain groups, as you put it.
Right. He was a little slow on Black Lives Matter during his campaign. Now, you can't criticize him too hard of that because I'm sorry. I've seen the picture of him getting fucking arrested during, the civil rights. Dude's been on board since we were born. But Bernie is obviously understands how capitalism has affected the African American community as opposed to the Latinx community or the LGBTQA community, right? He understands that. But he came at it with, these talking points. This is what I'm pushing, and it's the class struggle. And it was all correct, but he did evolve,
Yes,
and he brought Black Lives Matter on, and he said, "Oh, you're right. I haven't given that enough issue, and I have my issues with Bernie, no doubt. He's a politician.
Yeah.
I'm an anarchist. I'm not a big fan of representative democracy too much. I like direct democracy and real democracy. But yeah, so I mean, it's tough. It's tough to navigate this, but on the right, you have just such a total lack of understanding of all of these things. They're just grasping at straws. And we have elements on the left of that too, where, kind of manifest a little bit in these social justice warriors, which then gives fodder to the alt-right and their ignorance because they just want to win. Total Massacre has a great fucking song where it's like, you don't care about facts, you don't care about reality, you just want to win the argument.
Yeah.
Yeah. All the time. And social justice warriors do it too. So if you're on the left, to my comrades, I'm not trying to shit on you too much, but if you're just trying to win, if you're just trying to make them look bad, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
You need to actually have your shit, or just shut up. If you don't really, really have it, or if they come at you with something, don't call them, fuck you, Trump's a piece of shit. You make us all look bad when you do that. I'm sorry, but you do.
Well, and that was what caused the rise of Trump, is basically Hillary saying, don't you want a woman president? And then you have Madeleine Albright out there saying, there's a special place in hell for women who don't support Hillary. So, it's kind of like they didn't have this fundamental argument against Trump and this rise of this disenfranchised, blue collar world that are losing their job, and they are because of the growing world economy and everything and automation really that's going on. But Trump is just scapegoating everyone, which isn't right, but it makes sense why he's rose to power. It really does. It does. And if we want to stop him and not prevent another eviler Trump to come to power, we need to refine our argument and be very fact-based. And hopefully that will help. I don't know.
No, it absolutely will help. And I just think that we have to learn, not only do we have to learn how to properly confront the alt-right or just block them, we also have to learn how to kind of talk to the social justice warriors too. We can't be shitting on them online. We can't be we have to have our differences and stuff. Now, look, actually, this might be actually a little off subject, but I wanted to say this earlier. Was I got no problem with cussing at people and even calling names. I get criticized for this a lot. That I call names, especially to the alt-right. If I even sense a hint of bigotry from you, I'm probably going to come out. You're a fucking bigot piece of shit. Fuck you. But then I'm also going to, from there, provide very specific examples of why I just said that.
Mm-hmm.
But I do employ that. And the reason I do that is because I want them to know that I do not respect them. I'm not hanging my argument on Trump's a piece of shit and you're a dumb fuck.
Yeah.
Okay. But I'm saying that. And I have no qualms with it. And like I said, I do take a lot of criticism for it. But I'll tell you what, it's triggered a lot of them. And sometimes I've had these guys end up hitting me up in private message to really let me have it. And then, and then a couple of months later, the dude sending me pictures of Howard Zinn's People's History of the United States. So, and I get this from social justice warriors, especially like, you're just name calling and talking shit and being foul. Like, yeah. But have you ever got a fucking alt-right guy to buy a Howard Zinn book? Fuck.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't always work. You know what I mean? But that's. So I'm just not trying to. I don't want to say that it's wrong to say Trump's a piece of shit and you're a fascist fuckwad. It's totally okay to say that, but you have to have more than just that.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And then, oh, no, I'm not, and blah blah blah. Oh yeah, well then you're just dumb as fuck and you don't know what you're talking. And then it's two people telling each other they're dumb as fuck and don't know what they're talking about, and both of them are.
Yeah. And that's the current state of a lot of social media nowadays, right there.
It is. This is where we're at right now, and so we have to learn from it. We have to have talks like this, bro, and critique it and try to understand people from where they're coming from. And a lot of these social justice warriors, they may, a lot of them are going to become really amazing, adept, organizing socialists that are going to help us foment the revolution someday. There's the potential. They want to be involved.
Mm-hmm.
This is great. We have to figure out how to encourage that, but at the same time, not put up with the ignorant bullshit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I completely agree. And once again, I said earlier, the one thing I do really, really appreciate and am impressed with all of the SJWs is they're very active. They're very politically active, and they get out there and they're not afraid to do things, which that's what we need, and that's a good thing. So, that's definitely a good thing.
Definitely. Just do some homework.
Yeah, exactly.
Keep learning and keep reading and expand. There's people who know more than you, and there's people who know more than me.
Mm-hmm.
It's never going to change.
Yeah.
So keep bettering yourself and be a better social justice warrior. Be a true, what that term really implies. Be a true warrior for social justice. This is an important thing. And it sucks that it's been turned into a bad word. Because what is wrong with social justice and what is wrong with getting out and fighting for it?
Yep. Exactly. It's been, It's that idea has been turned into a negative, which is like, well, social justice should be a good thing, but it's been co-opted by those loud few,
Well, man, what a fantastic fucking talk, bro.
Yeah, we went a little over, but hey, it was well worth it, dude. I had a blast, man.
I really had a blast. I think that Mike passed out.
Nope, Mike's here.
Okay. Mike's still here. Nice.
Mike, you got any thoughts on social justice warriors?
No.
I don't blame you at all, my friend. No, that was fantastic talk. I think what I want to do, though, is play Reagan's Youth, Jesus Was a Communist, and get the fuck out of here. What do you guys think?
Let's do it.
Yep.
Cool.
Sounds good, man.
Hey, everybody, please check out Punk Rock and Politics on the YouTube. Where else are you streaming, bro? Where can they find all your stuff?
Oh, just any streaming site, Stitcher, iTunes. We just got onto iHeartRadio, which was pretty cool. It took a while. So pretty much anything that you listen to podcasts on, check it out there. Or we're on YouTube, too, just like you guys. So, yeah, pretty much anywhere.
And
nice.
On the Facebook.
Oh, yeah, and on the Facebook. We like to post a lot of funny political memes. So punk political memes. Those are always good times.
And you rant occasionally on the tweeters, do you not?
Oh, yeah. I always get in fights. I've actually had a big, long fight with Fat Mike from NoFX. That was fun.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It's always a lot of fun to get on Twitter and rant at people. So, yeah, if you're on Twitter, come hit me up. It's PRP_podcast, or you could just search Punk Rock and Politics pretty much on anything, and something will pop up.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Well, hey, thanks so much for coming on. And before you do play Reagan Youth, I do have to put a little quick plug. I was so happy because they got back together. Actually, Paul Cripple brought the band back together, but he, after the suicide of the lead singer and everything, but he got Tibby X, who she was the bassist for a while, and I'm really sad that they broke up again, and I hope Paul Cripple does some more work and everything, because the idea of Reagan Youth is just it's so awesome, and they need to come back and make a resurgence. But I had Tibby X on the podcast, on the Punk Rock and Politics podcast. Yeah, and I talked to her quite a while, and it was a blast, and I was able to play some Reagan Youth on Punk Rock and Politics, and that was one of my highlights of the podcast that I've done.
No doubt.
Yeah.
And they're so relevant to what we're going through right now.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Their satire take on things. If you look at one of their records, you'd think it's some kind of KKK record or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
well, that was the point. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They were trolling the right before trolling was even a word.
Totally.
Awesome. Well, hey, thanks so much for having me
out.
Yeah, thanks, Mike.
Yeah, you got it, brother.
Liberation theology. They claim that Jesus came to free the poor from oppression. Class struggle is the basic dynamic of social life. To them, poor countries had been made and kept deliberately poor and dependent on the oppressors, the capitalists. And America is the chief culprit.